Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this inaugural Deliver event here in the Middle East. For those of you that I've not been able to meet as yet, my name is Robert Maslamoney. Most people call me Rob, and I'm in charge of the Global PMO and Operations Excellence at DP World. My role primarily focuses on strategy, execution, and transformation. And what does that mean? That means designing, building, and operating at scale supply chains that have the ability to respond in uncertain times, under pressure, and particularly when environments are not ideal. At DP World, we employ just over 100,000 people globally across 7 regions, operating in 79 countries, handling roughly 10% of global containerized trade. That translates to about 105 million TEU of throughput annualized at a top line of about $20 billion. That's our logistics division. Now, what underpins this scale is a core belief in our organization that the operating environment of global trade is fundamentally changing. It is no longer a one-size-fits-all supply chain approach. Volatility is the new normal. Volatility is now the default condition, and we are no longer planning around this in ad hoc events. The retail segment in particular has been hit the hardest with this. Demand is always on, margins are tight, and there's a low tolerance for failure. This reality has caused us to rethink the importance of cost and speed, including how supply chains are designed in order to help retailers perform under pressure. This session today will focus on 2 topics. 1, what this shift means in particular for retailers in the Middle East. And 2, how retailers can shift from reacting to disruption to operating more confidently in an environment and time that is highly ambiguous. The retail sector today is being squeezed on both sides. On the one hand, we have intense pricing pressure, and on the other hand, we have tighter margins, very little room for error, and an always-on demand. Things that were once constant peaks are today regular occurrences. Promotions, digital channels, flash sales, Ramadan, Eid breaks are no longer singular events that we are planning for. What used to be peak management today has become everyday execution. This ultimately changes the operating reality of a retailer. As a result, we are seeing a clear shift in the mindset of our customers, from reacting to designing for disruption, from efficiency-first models to optionality-first models. In this environment, 2 capabilities are key, and much more important than anything else. We talk here about visibility, real-time awareness, the ability to have information at your fingertips that allows you to pivot as the environment changes. Optionality, the ability to change course, particularly in tough, uncertain conditions. This shift is also very visible here in the Middle East. The Middle East as a location is evolving from once being a transit point to now being a critical control layer. So let's talk a little bit more about this. The Middle East region has generally been framed as a global choke point. We've seen in recent times certain events like the blockage of the Suez Canal with the Ever Given, geopolitical uncertainty, or the closures of the Bab el-Mandab Strait, resulting in 25% of global ocean-going capacity being circumnavigated around the Cape, including tightly interconnected routes. Historically, this region has been viewed as something to pass through as efficiently as possible. But that view, particularly for retailers, is rapidly changing. The Middle East is increasingly becoming a control point. Why? retailers are able to use the region to create options, to store inventory, to defer duty and decisions, to postpone final allocation, and to rebalance stock before sending it to the final markets. We've seen recently in some statistics, 42% of Dubai retail trade is re-exported out of the country. This is a clear signal of the region evolving and growing its role in redistribution. This also signals the hub and spoke policy that starts to evolve. The Middle East is pivoting and becoming an orchestration layer. In DP world, what this means for us, it means pivoting from an asset-heavy, port-centric organization to investing in physical assets paired with decision-making and technology and bringing that closer to demand. The real value today for retailers results in control and not just throughput. So let me give you an example of this. And one example of a control point logic that's playing out today is Egypt. Egypt is strategically well positioned at the crossroads of the Indian subcontinent, the Middle East, Mediterranean, Europe, and African markets. From a retail perspective, Egypt presents multiple advantages. You have a large, cost-competitive labor force. You have a growing consumer market, north of 100 million population, most of that very young and well-educated. You have nearshoring alternatives given the geographic location of Egypt, and you have access to multiple trade agreements that provide tariff advantages. In Egypt, at DP World, we have made consistent investments in the country. Some examples of that is around the $850 million investment in our port and terminal facility in Sokhna in the Red Sea, as well as investing in a freight forwarding ocean and air structure across the country from the Mediterranean to Upper Egypt, a special economic zone that is within proximity to our port, as well as a recently inaugurated logistics park, and a marine capability. In addition to this, particularly for the retail segment, we have also made investments in Egypt in 6th of October, 10th of Ramadan, in A-grade contract logistics facilities. Now, what's the benefit to retail about all of this nice infrastructure? Through having these assets in central locations, it helps retailers to hold, process, and redirect inventory, not just unload and push cargo forward. And this is especially important in price-sensitive markets. The outcome is that you shorten your reaction cycles and that you have fewer markdowns, which in turn gives a benefit from a margin perspective. So as you can see, investing into assets like this, like Sokhna, is not just about moving goods, but it's really about having the agility within your supply chain and ultimately improve your margins. Now let me make this a little bit more tangible. A common retail flow, and I'll keep it very high level here. You manufacture in an origin or source location, let's take Bangladesh or India. You consolidate and you control that in the Middle East, and you distribute that onwards to your final market. Now, what's important here is not the geography, but the design of the flow. The benefits of this design allows retailers to keep inventory closer to demand, to delay final market decisions, and to reroute stock as demand is adjusted. And this is a common logic that's applied in fast fashion or seasonal retail. The key here is that optionality in your supply chain helps you to protect margin. It's not just about protecting speed. Speed still matters, but only if you're sending the right products to the right markets at the right time. Now, a few months ago, I was in Amsterdam at the Deliver Europe event. That's actually where we signed the Middle East chapter. And since then, we've been focusing on enabling this optionality for our customers. And we've been very deliberate about this, focusing on three things: First and foremost, if you look at the slide behind me at the bottom section, around 22 capabilities or assets. We are investing strategically into choke points, whether that's ports, special economic zones, freight forwarding capability, contract logistics, etc. Ensuring that we are building this infrastructure for storage and redistribution, not just throughput. Secondly, layered on top of this asset structure is technology, visibility platforms. And here I'm referring to control towers and orchestration layers that act as decision tools, providing you with insights and information about what's happening not only in your supply chain, but within the markets in real time. And last but not least, people, supported by discipline, ensuring that we have standardized and disciplined execution, scalable operating models, and the ability to perform consistently under pressure across regions. What I like to say, McDonaldizing your operations. Without scale and discipline, one creates risk. And our goal at DP World has been scaling with control so that the optionality works in real time, not just on paper. So let me bring in a real life example. We have a recent large multinational retailer that has been facing prolonged lead times and increasing pressure on margins. Rather than just trying to push harder through a single source model, we worked with this retailer to redesign the flow. By shifting or tapping off around 35% of sourcing from Asia and rebalancing that to Latin America and Eastern Mediterranean, we were able to reduce lead time of product from source to destination by several weeks, including around 5 million euro of lost retail sales. The lesson here is that in your supply chains, you have to design optionality into your model. And what this means is multiple sourcing options, trade corridor mix. When your current routes are not working and operating, what options do you have? Secondly, asset-backed execution, working with partners that have the ability to control choke points, as well as consolidating one throat to choke, and then being able to pivot very fast, having the capability to pivot very fast, especially when conditions change or are uncertain. So optionality here for DP World really means margin plus service protection, particularly when the environment is working against you. Now, visibility, of course, an important word in this segment, but visibility alone does not equate to an advantage. I think most retailers today can already see disruption coming. And I think the real advantage is really about how fast and confidently you can respond to those changes when it comes. And this is where control towers play a significant role in terms of delivering value. A recent study by Accenture shows that control towers can deliver around 5% of supply chain cost reduction and around 15 to 20% improve in labor efficiency. That's quite material when you're running a 100 million or multi-billion-dollar business. Control towers are key since they allow you to enable real-time prioritization, assuming your underlying data is clean and structured. It enables you to reroute proactively, and it allows you to redeploy inventory into areas where you can either maximize margin or cover, let's say, lack of supply. And this capability is particularly important in the Middle East, where supply chains can span multiple gateways, multiple sourcing locations, I would say high and complex regulatory and customs environments. So what's key here is that decision velocity matters just as much as capability. Information, ownership, and control of assets is truly powerful. One more distinction that I would like to make that's important is always on. And always on demand does not mean more volume. What it really means is constant variability, uncertainty, demand moving faster, swings being much more sharp, and far less predictability in terms of what you're used to. In the GCC, if you look at some of the statistics, we see up to 70% of cart abandonment, and we see around 18% of returns. We see even higher ratios in segments like electronics, etc. Returns, as an example, is no longer an exception. It's a second supply chain where one needs to run in parallel to, say, outbound fulfillment. This is further amplified in the Middle East by a very high digital penetration, around 90% to be specific, cross-border fulfillment, including the complex customs and regulatory environments that I think most of us who operate in this part of the world are aware of. In order to be successful in an environment like this, it's really not about heroic intervention. What it really comes down to is reliable, consistent, daily execution built into your operating model. Now, if there's just one message I would like to leave all of you with this afternoon, success, particularly in this segment, really comes down to options being built into your operating model. We live in a volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world. The retailers who will succeed need to ensure that they have partners with asset-backed networks that provide real-time flexibility, digitally enabled decision-making, relevant, trusted data at your fingertips that can turn insights into actions, as well as an operating model that is designed for constant disruption, not perfect conditions. Lastly, I would say we need to continue to reshape our thinking of the relevance and importance of the Middle East. The Middle East is rapidly evolving into a strategic control layer and not just a passing point or a passageway that one needs to move through in the most efficient manner. It helps retailers with margin protection, service reliability, and sustainable growth. So on that note, I'd like to thank all of you for coming here, learning more about what we are doing, and I would invite all of you to join myself and my colleagues at B11 to talk more about your business and what we can do to help you protect your margins. Thank you.